So our next speaker, I'm absolutely delighted to say, is Olly Craughan, who is the head of CSR at DPD UK. For those of you who don't know DPD, they are going great guns with a shift to electrification and sustainability here in the United Kingdom. Olly, delighted to have you join us here this morning. As with all of our speakers, I'd like to just first ask an opening question. Clearly 2020 has been a year when online delivery of online retail has been in accelerated mode. It's also a year when DPD's activity has accelerated its rollout of electric vehicles. Could you tell us a little bit more about your electric vehicle side, and perhaps a bit more about the drivers and the vehicles those drivers are using?
Yeah, of course. Thank you for inviting me. For obviously, first of all, look, this year has been extremely challenging for us all. Obviously, with COVID, DPD have seen volumes increase hugely. The daily volumes that we see now are what we would have seen in our 6-week peak period on the run up to Christmas. So you can see the massive growth in there. That hasn't stopped DPD moving forward with our sustainable objectives. And as you mentioned, we'd hit our target of 10% of fleet, electrification of fleet, not just the fleet, but across the UK as well. So it wasn't limited to just the capital or a certain area of the country. It was across the UK, no matter what the geography was of the depots. And we achieved that back in July. The structure of the business is obviously our drivers are employed, and what we call owner drivers, our service champions, our brand ambassadors that are self-employed. The electrical fleet is rolled out across that employment and staff system, and the ODFs, they take their vehicles home. So obviously charging at home instead of depot, which helps our structure and our infrastructure. And with that, with the OLEV £350 grant, we DPD actually pay £350 as well to towards the charger, which means that our owner drivers don't actually typically have to pay anything towards the charger. And once it's fitted to their home, it is theirs. DPD doesn't own it, it's theirs to keep no matter what the outcome. If they leave DPD, it's still theirs, or move house and we'll pay for another one to be fitted. So that was one of our incentives to push electrification in the business, and drivers are very happy to move towards the EV instead of the diesel vehicles. The fleet consists of numerous sized vehicles. We have some cargo bikes, something that we're looking into, working with EAV as well, who have actually launched a second generation on that sort of partnership of creating that bike and that e-bike. We use the Paxter in certain urban locations, which actually Norwegian Post use. It's like an electrical quad bike. And then the Nissan ENV is the sort of predominant vehicle of fleet due to the availability of it, the cost, and it's the vehicle that we've been able to implement very quickly. And Matt had talked about going for the low-hanging fruit. Now that's where we've gone with the Nissan. We've gone for routes that are within range of the vehicle, closer to the depot, high volume residential smaller items such as your sort of ASOS clothing bag or your mobile phone being delivered. One of the challenges for DPD now is the 3.5 ton, and we do have 100-man ETGs that have been delivered this year, and that's the vehicle that we really need to push forward with now. We do not want to be buying more smaller vans, which will create more vehicles on the road, causing more congestion. We need 3.5 ton, as any parcel delivery business will need. You know, it's the workhorse of the fleet. And the more are coming to market. The Mercedes e-Sprinter we're trialing at the moment. Max has delivered 9. these are vehicles that will give us the capacity to really push forward with our electrical fleet and expand it into other areas as well in the country. With that, charging, as I spoke about, is obviously a challenge, Aid. We work with PodPoint. We do have chargers at depots as well, and have future-proofed our property for the expansion of that. But public charging is a necessity, and we need us to see a bigger growth in that.
So thanks very much indeed, Ollie, for that opening gambit. Really interesting to hear about your developments. On the charging side, coming back to the work that Matt has been doing at Pivot Power, do you see technologies like Pivot Power's battery storage and EV charging solution being a useful one in the DPD mix of solutions?
It's essential, Aid, as well as sort of the grid serve electrical forecourt. You know, we need these to help extend our reach in zero emission deliveries. You know, they will be the springboard where we could rapid charge and further the reach in delivery. Range is the issue at the moment in vehicles, and at the moment we've gone for a strategy of obviously not delivering en route, not charging en route, sorry. But there will be a point in time that we do need to further that, and these are the great opportunities to utilise the services of Pivot Power or Grid Serve and move forward and push that further, extend our reach.
Thanks so much indeed, Ollie. Once again, to our online audience, if you have some questions for Olly Craughan at DPD, please do fire them in. We'd be delighted to share those questions with Ollie. Just a few more questions from me, Ollie, before we do hand over to the online audience. Let's talk about net zero then. I mean, I know that the drive to net zero is a big part of DPD's work. It's the title of this morning's online series event. Could you tell us a little bit more about DPD's commitment to a net zero strategy?
Well, just recently we launched a very ambitious strategy across Europe. We will deliver 225 cities zero emissions by 2025. In the UK, that will be 25 towns and cities throughout the UK by 2025. Huge investment, massive project. Very proud of being able to launch that project. We will need, depending on growth in the industry, we'll have a fleet of over 4,000 EVs by the end of 2025. But again, I think the biggest challenges in that will be charging. It won't be the availability of the vehicle. I think it will be the charging network. Very
good. Good. So let's look a bit at the opportunities then. I mean, obviously the vans and trucks sector that is central to your work represents a huge market opportunity for charging infrastructure companies. You've just outlined the need for that charging infrastructure. What would your message be to those companies in the charging infrastructure space, particularly maybe those that are looking to engage with DPD?
That we have nothing is off the table. Please come and talk to us, engage with us. We're willing to trial and test any sort of technology or solution moving forward. I think we need to work harder to really sort of push and accelerate government involvement and funding even further to really help this move forward. There's just not enough access to the charging infrastructure. You know, moving forward, we need it to grow even quicker and be more. There needs to be more of a common solution as well. There seems to be a lot of people going off in different directions, which, you know, for example, one of our drivers has 10 different apps on his phone to charge at various stations. And I've been made aware that contactless payments will be accelerated in charging networks by the end of the year, but we need a more common solution.
Very good. There's a follow. I'll hand over now 2 questions from our online audience. There's one which relates precisely to what you just said about that driver who has 10 apps on his phone. You've mentioned that at the moment you're not looking at solutions for charging along the way for your drivers, but are you looking at any EV routing solutions in the future to help with planning for your drivers to charge en route or not?
We're definitely. If my comment came across that we weren't looking at, we are. Initially, okay. we weren't looking at a charging solution because as Matt said, low-hanging fruit. We know the miles that our vehicles do, and the ones within range, they're the ones that we've rolled out as electrical delivery routes because the driver doesn't have to charge. Something that DPD is a high-quality parcel delivery firm. If you've ever had a DPD delivery, which I know from our conversations, Aid, you've had plenty, you get your 1 hour window. The concern with charging en route, our predict service will be interrupted by that. The driver will need to charge, potentially turn up to the charger. There's someone already on it. They're going to have to wait longer to actually charge their vehicle. And then for the rest of the day, every single consumer who has had their 1 hour window, it's going to be late delivery. So I've been speaking to Sam Clark at GridServe about potentially, could you get a booking service where you book a slot? So we could incorporate that into our optimization of route. So the driver knows when they're going to need their charge and when they've got their break. It's in there, incorporated into the route. The charger, at charge station has been then allocated for their block of time. They know that no one's going to be on the charger. They're straight on, charge and go.
Very good. Thanks. The question of hydrogen has come in from Richard Amanaguma. He asks, are you looking at hydrogen, and if so, for what vehicles?
We've gone for the all-electric sort of path and we're focusing at the moment with our final mile delivery vehicles. So for me, electrification and the business, that is the path to go down. Hydrogen, potentially with HGVs and larger vehicles. Our partners, our other business units in Europe have been fortunate enough to test a class 1 vehicle that's fully electric, but the costs are huge, and there's limitations to some of those vehicles. So it's something we're keeping very close to, but our focus is to roll out final mile delivery solution in an all electric fleet and keep a close eye on what's happening in the larger, the heavy goods sector.
That's a similar kind of answer to the one that Matt Allen gave, that if there are technologies that are available now with the need for decarbonisation, let's deploy those existing, perhaps more readily achievable technology solutions. There's another question coming from Darren Meads. He asks, if the plan is to have an all-electric fleet, what happens with the current fleet?
We have a lifetime on our vehicles anyway, so they will be defleeted and recycled. We'll find the right way of defleeting them and ensuring that they're sustainably done so as well.
Very good. A final question then, Olly, from the online audience. He asks, are DPD looking at perhaps adding additional batteries to vehicles to increase the range?
Well, then the problem is typically with more batteries, they weigh more, which means the payload of the vehicle is less. The 3.5 ton electric vehicle actually has typically a smaller load area than a diesel equivalent as well, while costing typically £20,000 more than a diesel equivalent as well. So adding more batteries and going further has its challenges, because there's a point, and this is where actually being able to utilize a pivot power solution or a GridServe solution, a rapid charging of vehicle to then extend the range is actually better, because you're not sacrificing payload. Again, you're going to have more vehicles on the road because they can't carry as much weight or parcel volume. So there's a tipping point.